Hi, I'm Julie Pham. Welcome to the CuriosityBased channel. Today we're going to talk about the difference between training and learning as it relates to professional development at your organization. Now, before we start, please don't forget to subscribe to this channel and also follow us on LinkedIn, Instagram, and Facebook. The links are going to be in the description below. So now let's dive in. I hear people talk about training and learning as if they are interchangeable. And that's because employers often say, hey, I need training for my organization. And what they're really saying is we have some educational needs for our employee, for our team. So I started to get curious and like, what is the difference between training and learning? And I looked up the definitions. So training, the definition of training is it's about transmitting information and knowledge. Learning is about absorbing that information so that you can build skills that you can use in a variety of different contexts. The second difference is the engagement type. So in training, it's about listening. It's about passive listening. And in learning, it's about active discussion and engagement. The third difference is about the direction of the learning. So in training, it's unilateral. So the trainer is training the participants. I am being trained or I am training. And in learning, actually all of that learning is happening in multiple directions. The participants are learning from one another. The instructor is also learning from the participants. The participants are also learning from the instructor. The fourth difference is the content. So for training, the content is consistent, it's repeatable, and you can test people on it. And in learning, the content is actually supplied by the participants themselves, so it changes every time. Now, the fifth one is the progression. So in training, it's linear. You are progressing in a very linear fashion from basic to intermediate to expert to mastery, and you've got to go through those different levels. In learning, it's cyclical. It's you learn and then you learn some more and you keep learning in a more cyclical fashion. Now, the sixth difference is the size of the audience. The huge benefit of training is that you can train a whole bunch of people, large groups of people all at once. It's super scalable. And learning, actually the best learning comes in small groups and active discussion and that coaching that can happen in small, intimate groups. The seventh one is the type of audience. And so in training, it's people who are less expert who want to learn from someone who has more expertise. In learning, it's the makeup of the audience are people who have different perspectives, viewpoints, approaches, and they are agreeing to learn from one another and by sharing those opinions. And the final one is about the role of the instructor, the role of the facilitator. So in training, the instructor is the expert and they are imparting their expertise to the audience. And in learning, the instructor is actually a facilitator and they're just facilitating a discussion, a conversation. So if you can't tell already, I have a bias towards learning experiences. And that's because that's what we do most of the time at CuriosityBased. I'll give you an example. I remember we did a learning experience on listening effectively. And at the end, one of the participants said, wow, that was the first time I went to a workshop on listening effectively where we actually practiced listening. Normally, we listen to people talk about how to listen effectively and we don't actually practice it. At the same time, I don't want to create this false binary between training and learning. There are definitely trainings that have elements of experiential learning and experiential learning that have elements of training. So there is something gray in between. Now, you may still be wondering, well, what's best for me? Well, I have come up with 8 different questions that you can ask yourself to help you determine what is going to be best for your organization, for your organizational needs, because it really comes down to fit. So the first question that you can ask yourself is, do you want to deliver the same content to as many people as possible at once? Or are you okay with delivering that content over multiple sessions in smaller groups? Second question to ask yourself is, do you want things done in a particular way, or are you open to people doing things in different ways as long as they get the same or similar results? The third one is, do you already have established trust throughout your team, your organization, or do you actually need to work on building more trust? Fourth question is, are your employees asking for content that's going to help them do their job better, or are they asking for ways to connect with one another? Fifth one is your team organization made up of individual contributors, specialists, or is it made up of team players who have to collaborate with one another? The sixth question is, are you trying to build a shared language or a shared culture? Seventh question, are you prioritizing your external clients or your internal clients? And the eighth question is, does your team prefer passive listening or active discussion? Now, some teams actually prefer sitting and listening. And so you have to really think about what makes most sense for your team. So I hope that after hearing all of these, this gives you more clarity. So if you answer the majority of the questions, if you answered by choosing the first option, that first choice, then training is probably the better way for you to go. And if you chose the second option for most of your questions, then I definitely suggest you explore learning experiences. So with this, all this information I've given you, all these different ways to think about the difference between training and learning, now I want you to ask yourself, hey, what makes more sense for my organization? Should we be doing training or learning? Now, if you found this information helpful and you want more details, I actually wrote a more comprehensive essay about this topic that you can read, and I'll put the link in the description below, or you can actually listen to me reading it in case you don't want to read. I hope you enjoyed this video and that you found it helpful. If so, please hit the like button. And also put comments below in the description. Again, think about, is it training, is it learning? What makes more sense for you? Again, I'm Julie Pham, and this is the Curiosity Based channel.